Okay, so I've talked about what bodily injury coverage is. In this video, I'm going to talk about the limits of liability for bodily injury. Now, like all coverages, bodily injury coverage has limits of liability up to which the insurance company will pay. These limits of liability can be found in the declarations page of the policy. They are represented as two numbers separated by a slash. An example is $25,000 per person / $50,000 per accident. Let's go over this first number. The first number means that the insured's bodily injury coverage will pay no more than $25,000 in medical expenses for each injured person in the third party. So this first number is the per-person limit. Here are two examples where the per-person limit is $25,000. Let's say you crash your car into another car, and the other driver has $15,000 in medical expenses. It's determined that you are at fault. Your bodily injury coverage pays the entire $15,000 because that amount is lower than your per-person limit of $25,000. Now let's say the medical expenses of the other driver are $30,000. As in the previous example, your per-person limit is $25,000. So your bodily injury coverage will only pay $25,000 of the total $30,000. You have to pay the remaining $5,000 in medical expenses to the third party. Now let's go over this second number. The second number means that the insured's bodily injury coverage will pay no more than $50,000 in third-party medical expenses resulting from a single accident. So this second number is the per-accident limit and is also known as the aggregate limit. Aggregate means all third-party medical expenses put together. Here are two examples where the per-accident limit is $50,000. Let's say you crash your car into another car. The other driver and two passengers each have $20,000 in medical expenses. The total is $60,000. It's determined that you are at fault. Now each person in the third party has injuries below your per-person limit of $25,000. But the total of $60,000 is more than your per-accident limit of $50,000. You have to pay the remaining $10,000 in medical expenses to the third party. Now let's say the other driver and only one passenger in the other car were injured. The other driver has $20,000 in medical expenses, and the passenger has $10,000 in medical expenses. The total is $30,000. Your bodily injury coverage pays all the third-party medical expenses because the expenses for the other driver and the passenger are each below your $25,000 per person limit, and the total of $30,000 is below your $50,000 per accident limit. What if you cause bodily injury to people in more than one other car? Your bodily injury coverage will treat this as a single accident, regardless of how many cars are involved. I'm going to give you two examples of this, where once again, you have bodily injury limits of $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident. Let's say you crash your car into two other cars. Each of the other drivers has $20,000 in medical expenses. The total is $40,000. It's determined that you are at fault. Your bodily injury coverage pays all the third-party medical expenses. This is because both of the other drivers' expenses are each below your per-person limit of $25,000, and the total of $40,000 is below your per-accident limit of $50,000. Now let's say the medical expenses for each of the other drivers are $10,000, and the medical expenses of a passenger in this car are $28,000. The total is $48,000. Your bodily injury coverage pays the expenses for each of the other drivers because each other driver's expenses are below your per-person limit of $25,000. However, your bodily injury coverage only pays $25,000 of the $28,000 in medical expenses for the passenger because the passenger's expenses are above your $25,000 per person limit. You have to pay the remaining $3,000 in third-party medical expenses. So the total payout for the accident is $45,000, not $48,000. Now this might be confusing at first. One might be tempted to think that the whole amount of $48,000 should be paid because it is below the per-accident limit of $50,000. Well, when an insurance company considers paying out, they determine whether any individual's medical expenses have exceeded your per-person limit before they analyze your per-accident limit. In this example, $3,000 was denied because that amount exceeds the per-person limit. Boom, that $3,000 is gone and has no bearing on your per-accident limit. And that's the reason why, despite your $50,000 per-accident limit, your bodily injury coverage pays only $45,000 of the $48,000 third-party total. All right, so I've talked about the limits of liability for bodily injury. In the next video, we'll be moving on to uninsured/underinsured motorist bodily injury, also known as UM and UIM.